Welcome to my podcast, Bathrobe Conversations with Black Women. I am your host, Rona Muhammad, and I'm here with a very special person in my life. And after this episode, you all are going to get to know her and love her as much as I do. This podcast is an opportunity for Black women to create and control our own narratives. I happen to know some amazing women that are powerhouses. They are bosses in their own right. They just simply decided that not only did they want to overcome, all of the trauma or difficulties that they had in their childhood, but grow up and be women who now are taking charge of their life. And then as an addition to that, making a decision to go out into their communities and make a difference. They are truly women who are being what they want to see. And this woman to my right, to your left, her name is Dawn Texera. So please welcome Dawn to the podcast. Hi, Dawn.
Thank you. I don't know how I could follow that big, huge introduction, but amazing.
Just be
I'm
yourself.
Proud of you.
Thank you.
Proud of you.
Well, being yourself is really how you're going to follow that introduction, because everything I said is 1,000% true. Dawn is someone who I met as a child. I was 12 years old in St. Louis, Missouri, and Dawn, she came to St. Louis, and this, just different. That's the first word that comes to my mind. She was unlike any other in terms of her appearance, how she looked, how she sounded, how she talked, was all just different. She had a very heavy Boston accent.
Sure did.
And I just, I looked at her and I was like, first of all, she's beautiful. And I want to be her. And I think what really made me really connect to you was your simple acceptance of first yourself. That was very apparent. And then you accepting yourself gave a gift of accepting me. As this little 12-year-old snot-nosed person who was following you around and was just like, oh my God, so in awe. Dawn was my aunt, I met Dawn because my aunt, who's about 5 years older than me, they were college freshmen at St. Louis University, and they befriended each other, and then they came off of campus, and Dawn moved in to the home that I was being reared in by my grandmother with my aunt, and her room was across the hall. She shared a room with my aunt, and I mean, I don't even know where to start, Dawn. I just don't know where to start.
I have a little sister, Janine. And then when I got to St. Louis, and me and my sister, we were only 2 years apart. So it wasn't like a little sister relationship.
Right.
Because she sometimes thought she was older than me. But when I met Rona and Rhonda, her twin sister, it was like getting that part of my big sister. So I loved them. I loved being around them. I loved their energy and how inquisitive and excited they were about everything, about life in general. So I love that because that's very much me. I'm very free-spirited, very liberal, just always been myself, and I loved that, especially Rona, because I really formed a deep connection with Rona because Rona was like a sponge. She absorbed everything, and we would have conversations, and I wouldn't treat her like a little kid. I would treat her like she was my peer, because in a way, that youthfulness that she had was part of me anyway.
Right.
I wasn't
Right.
that really serious person. So that's why her and I connected, and she's been like my little sister, niece, friend, best friend, all wrapped into
Sometimes
one.
daughter, because she tells me what to do, like
Yes,
she's my
I
mom,
do.
which I'm fine with that. I like to start off my podcast asking all of my guests the same question, because you clearly, people looking at you would not think that, at first glance, oh yeah, she might be a black woman, but if they're like up close, they're looking at the texture of your hair, your skin complexion, it's like, maybe she's something else. What is she? But you are a black woman, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's the reason why I want to ask all of my guests this question is, what has your experience been like being a black woman?
And it's so funny, it's like not having trying to think to have something prepared to say, but I do have something prepared to say because just recently at the company I work for, I'm on their diversity, inclusion, and committee.
Okay.
And that question was asked
Wow.
about diversity. And I said I had 3 phases of diversity. One, when I was young in high school, going to an all white school with a lot of white privileged kids, and everybody who looked like me was related to me. So, and coming from a place where I lived my formative years in Cambridge, Mass, which was very diverse. My best friend was Asian, I had a friend that was Indian, a Latino girl, and a Polish girl. That was our little crew. And then when I got to Cape Cod, that was the first time I really felt different, which I shouldn't have, because, all right, yes, I'm in a place where there's mostly white people, but my own people I felt different around.
Right.
And
right.
it's because of their lack of, their ignorance of knowing who they were as Cape Verdeans, which Cape Verde is off the coast of Africa. So they would claim they were Portuguese. No, we're not black, we're Portuguese. I'm like, you can't get any closer to Africa than a boat ride.
Right.
Because, as you know, the Portuguese were the worst slave traders. And what they would do is they'd take the cargo from Africa, stop at the Cape Verdean Islands before heading off to the United States, America.
Wow.
Right. So those people, of course, there was some raping and there was some pillaging, and then you started getting mixed blood, right? So that's why my last name is very Portuguese, but I identify as African. So when I was in high school, I went through this phase where I was very, I don't want to say taking the back seat, but I really couldn't be who I really wanted to be. And then I was so excited to leave Massachusetts, leave Cape Cod. I went to the school that gave as far away as I could go. I went to St. Louis. I knew nobody in St. Louis, not a single soul, nobody. I had an athletic scholarship, so I went where the money was, but I could have went to upstate New York. I could have went to Syracuse, but I decided to go to St. Louis. I just wanted to get as far away as I could. And when I got there, it was weird because then I was, again, an alien.
Right.
I wasn't black enough to be with the white folks.
That's
and
exactly right.
My whole field hockey team was all white. I was the only black person on the team. Some girl was asking me, was I mixed? Was I Italian? Was I Puerto Rican was the big one. Was I Puerto Rican? And it wasn't until one night when I was sitting in the quad, I just got some Fritos and a Pepsi, which is my dinner back then when I was tiny and it was an athlete, kept me going. And I met this guy that was trying to holler. I remember his name is Stefan. I'd never forget this. And he says, well, hey.
For those of my audience who don't know what trying to holler means, he was trying to pick her up.
Yeah, he was. And I went, and I was a strange bird. I was going through this Madonna phase. I had half of my hair shaved and the other half was in a bob. I wore boxer shorts. Remember boxer t-shirt and had some Doc Martens on. That was my outfit every day.
And understand, this bob that she had was just not your conventional straight bob. She
Yeah,
had all
curly.
this big, beautiful, these big black. I remember your hair just being very dark and these big black curls. And continue on. So that's your attire.
Yep. So he said, I'm going over to this dorm. Do you want to come? And I was like, well, who's going to be there? And at the time, I was pretty sure of myself. I was a brown belt in karate, taekwondo. So I knew if I had to take him out, I could. So we walked over to the club. We walked over to the other dorm, and it was Griezadek. No, it wasn't Griezadek. oh, I can't remember the name of the dorm. But I
I don't
found
have a
all the black people that I couldn't find on campus. They were all situated in this one dorm.
Centralized in one dorm.
Yes, and then I met Kayla.
Uh-huh.
I met Barbara Jackson, and that was, I felt like I was home. And that was a great experience for me because then I didn't feel like such an alien. Immediately I moved into that dorm, left the white girl who I was staying with. I just felt like I had community, and I think that's important when you go to college, is you have to find community. Even now, you've created your community,
Right.
but I think it's super important for our young people to find community, because if you don't find community, you can get lost.
Absolutely.
You can get lost.
And I think first it starts with truly, like you said, you was very self-assured. You knew whether you could, identify it and say that it was this or that, but you recognized how things made you feel. And either feeling like an outsider or, like you said, feeling like you're home. And so it's important that that work has to start with yourself first.
Right.
If you are a person that's insecure, then the external forces will dictate.
Right.
Instead of you securing yourself and then you dictating the external forces. Okay, I'm going to try this. Oh, that doesn't feel good to me. I'm going to try this. Oh, that feels good. Let me explore. Right? And so, and that is what you introduced to me. I mean, being in St. Louis is a very segregated city.
Black or white.
Black or white. I don't even remember seeing Asian or Hispanic people growing up. So I think for me, that's why there was such an appeal, because you were so different, right? And I was just like, who is she? And like, where did she come from? And I don't know. And so you go to St. Louis University.
Find my community. And then I started, and then I just was me. Then after that, my last phase is when I joined the corporate world. And then I was like, yes, I'm black. Yes, I'm Native American. Yes, I'm part Cuban. I put it all out there.
Right.
Because what I found is people would make remarks about Latinos in front of me. I would be offended. Like, don't just look at me as a black woman. I'm multidimensional. I'm multicultural. So any joke or any reference to other people, that bothers me.
Right.
But I've always been, my parents were very free thinking. My mother, I went to Europe when I was a senior in high school. And at that time, not a lot of black kids did. I think in my school, because we had to take our finals early, it was me and this other white girl that she was going off to Europe.
Yeah.
And
that's unheard of in my world.
Right.
Like, what? I haven't been to Europe as a grown adult woman, so as a junior in high school.
Yeah. And it was just an experience for me to learn other cultures. And I think I always say this to like my friends who have teenagers, if you can travel, let your kid travel. Even if it's not to Europe, go to Jamaica.
Right.
Go, and don't just stay at a resort. Go offbeat. You want to see how people live.
That's exactly right.
It makes you more appreciative of what you have. But not only that, gives you almost a sense of service. Like, I should do something.
Yes. And travel expands their knowledge base, right? Because most people live and they don't even leave not only the United States. I don't know if my mom or my grandmother ever went out of the country.
Oh, okay.
Well, I know they left Missouri. My mom, traveled by car all the time. She hated flying. But I don't believe that they ever travel internationally, ever. And so your knowledge base and your frame of reference is just only what you've experienced.
Exactly.
And so if you travel, and not only travel within domestically, but if you travel internationally, that expands your frame of reference.
Absolutely.
And it helps you to not place these limitations on yourself, because you've seen other parts of the world, you know other cultures exist, you know other ways of life exist, and things that might be happening here in the United States may not necessarily appeal to you. Right. But now that you've experienced other cultures, other areas, now I'm reading this book by Ava Muhammad, and she talked about our energies, and there might be certain parts. She said when they created the maps, they should also note on the maps the energy that emits from each part of that place on the map, because the energy that you have may not mesh with the energy in Alaska, I don't know, or Switzerland or wherever. But Belize might just be your
place. That might be my judge right there.
So I feel like not knowing, growing up in St. Louis, I lived vicariously through the television. And so I would see music videos and I would see different things, and that's how I learned that there was more to life than St. Louis, Missouri.
Right.
But then when you showed up, and this is my repeated theme, you were the tangible example of somebody who had traveled by that time that I met you, traveled internationally. You were not from St. Louis, so you mean to tell me you're not even from here? So then that tangible example that here's somebody who's doing it, then why can't I? And I think it just seeps subconsciously into my brain. I don't know that at 12 or 13 when I met you that I know that I hadn't. I just knew something was different, and I held on to that. So on top of just being a fabulous person, Dawn, you are a mom.
Yes, I am. 21-year-old.
21-year-old black man, because Ryan is
he's a man now.
He's a man. How have you managed, and I've asked my other moms, first of all, do you have anxieties raising Ryan in this world and trying to instill certain important,
absolutely,
characteristic traits in him, and then sending him off into the world? And then you and I connected on a different level in terms of the whole academic piece and education, and how our children's COVID revealed
all the cracks in the
underbelly.
Yes,
it just showed the underbelly, and the fact that the United States, we always knew as black people that healthcare and education, we were at the bottom rung. But it really exposed it on a international level to the world, that you have 350 million or 375 million people who exist within your country, but you only have 1 million hospital beds. Like, are you kidding me?
Well, from an educational standpoint, I think the United States was always poor.
Right.
If you look at the rankings of other countries of where our kids place in math and science, is ridiculous. So that period, that had nothing to do with COVID, that has been a long-standing truth. Just when COVID happened, then everything went to hell. My son had already graduated from high school after that, but after when COVID hit. But raising him, and my son is on the spectrum, it's high functioning autism. So I had to do everything times 2. So every book he read, I had to read it. Just so we could, because sometimes he didn't get analogies, and, I'd have to explain to him. So everything he read, I had to read. If he had to read Great Gatsby, I had to read that for the 99th time. I'd have to read it so we can have discussion, so I can make sure that he's understanding the themes of it. I had to be a super advocate. I'd have to go to school. I volunteered in his school. When he got in high school, I was so nervous. So first thing, I'd always played sports. He played soccer since he was 4. And then I started coaching him.
I remember.
At 8. So I had all the little kids at 8. Coached him all the way up through high school. And then even in high school, I still coached the rec teams. And then I became a girls coach.
I remember.
High school soccer coach. But all these things, I had to put myself into that school to make sure that school did right by him. I'd go to the meetings. They knew when I was coming. They were prepared, and I think that's what bothered. It was great, but it bothered me too, because you shouldn't have to prepare for me. You should be giving me the same attention, even though I'm demanding it, the same attention you give every other parent.
But see, that might have even been the issue, that they weren't giving other parents that attention.
And the parent might not have put forth the effort too.
Well, yeah.
So, but that's the whole thing, and that with the these meetings, some parents wouldn't show up.
Yeah.
Some parents would be combative. Some people were delusional. Some would just let it go, where I would go through every task and every, I forgot what they're called. Anybody on the couch? Every milestone that he was supposed to meet.
The objectives.
The objectives. And I would go through, couch educator.
Right.
But I have to go through every objective, and if I felt like it was too much, then I would say, well, can we look at it and bring it down? Or if I thought it was too little, I would stress, no, he's capable of more than that.
Right.
We need to push him.
That's a lot.
Exactly.
That's a lot, Dawn.
But you know what helped him a lot? Playing sports.
Yes.
He played lacrosse. Not only was he amazing at lacrosse, he was also amazing at soccer.
Mm-hmm.
And I pushed him to play those things. He liked soccer because that's what we knew. But lacrosse, I pushed him to play lacrosse. And he didn't want to. And the minute the first game, he scored a goal in less than 2 minutes. And he was like all county, in high school. So,
there's the confidence booster.
but I think the team sports helped his autism, because part of autism is social.
Okay.
And
Right.
he never had a problem with that because he was always around a team effort,
Okay.
and he would be a leader when he needed to be, and he'd be a follower if he needed to
And
be,
be a
and
good
he knew how to
teammate.
do both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had
So-
the ability. Yeah. Again, beating the different stereotypes
Yes.
that I feel like as Black people, we always have to do. We always have to go above status quo when, again, these boxes that exist in the world that they try to place us in, we're constantly fighting to get outside of those boxes because we already have our own internal stuff that our fears, our anxieties. So that's great. I mean, I didn't even realize or even think about from a social aspect how because one would think if you're on the spectrum and you're challenged socially that you wouldn't be able to operate in a team setting, right?
Right, and he flourished because he's always been around kids from 4 when I think they diagnosed him at 3. He was always good at physical stuff.
Okay.
Like he had delayed speech, so he didn't speak like complete sentences until he was about 4.
Okay.
But he could always he was potty trained early. He walked early. Everything physical he did early.
Wow.
So I just played on that. Like
That was a strength.
Right. And then when it came to athletics, I was an athlete.
Uh-huh.
His father
Don't talk about
was an athlete.
Don't talk
Played
about my
softball
friend.
down at the park. But I guess he was an athlete too.
At Forest Park. That's that counts.
Yeah, so when we were talking about athletics, he wanted Ryan to play basketball and football, and I said no. I want him to play soccer. I want him to play lacrosse.
Because again, that's the box.
Stereotypes,
Black
right?
Kids play football and basketball.
Yes,
and here your little Massachusetts ass coming to St. Louis,
playing field hockey, which nobody. I don't think there was in the whole division another black person.
I didn't even know what field hockey was until you
against a
introduced
black
it to
person.
me.
Yeah, yeah.
What's that?
I know.
Hilarious.
But I think that's a lesson for people that are raising kids. And it's funny because Daryl's nephew has 2 boys. They're playing soccer. They're playing golf. I had Ryan at golf at 4. Because like I said, anything physical, I was like, if he could have fenced at 4, I would have put him in it.
Right.
Just to try with swimming lessons, trying to do other things other than basketball and football.
Right.
It's the norm.
And there's nothing against those sports.
No. It is nothing.
We're just saying that there are more that exist that we should introduce our children to than those 2.
Exactly.
Talking about Ryan's wonderful father,
Yes.
my friend.
Mine too.
You all have been together for
24 years.
24 years. And you're not married.
Nope.
And another stereotype is that women, we want to be married, we want to be married, we want to be married. And quite frankly, in your dynamics, it's your kind of choice that you love the relationship
Mhm.
as is. Like you're not
Absolutely.
pressed and running to the altar, obviously after 24 years.